Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Casterton Vintage. On my travels I visit a lot of events, and there's one tractor that's the most common at all of these, and that's the Standard Fordson. So I thought it was time I tried to put together the story of the Standard Fordson in video. If you'd like to know a little bit more about this tractor whilst watching it hard at work, this is the video for you. Our story begins at the Henry Ford Museum, Detroit, where we see one of Henry's early prototypes. This ultimately led to the design of the Fordson tractor as we know it today. A batch of 50 to 60 of these tractors were produced for testing, and 2 of them were shipped to the UK. The British government were heavily engaged in the First World War at the time, and they were desperate for tractors to produce food. On the strength of a large order from the Ministry of Munitions, Henry put the tractor into production. He delivered the first one on the 8th of October 1917. A total of 6,000 were delivered within 6 months. These very early Fordsons were simply known as the MOM tractors, and are easily identified by the ladder design to the sides of the radiator, the 6-spoke back wheels, and the lack of a Fordson name on the front of the radiator. In 1918, the tractor was launched as the Model F on the US market. In 1919, Henry decided to open a factory in Cork in Ireland. Henry's father had immigrated from Cork in 1948 during the Irish potato famine. It's thought that Henry wanted to use his immense wealth to bring some prosperity to that region. After years of playing with prototypes, Henry finally decided to put some of his top engineers on designing the tractor in 1915. He also formed a new company called Henry Ford & Sons that was totally family owned, to manufacture tractors independently of the Ford Motor Company. They came up with the idea of building the engine, gearbox and back axle as a stressed casting assembly, which formed a self-supporting structure that didn't need a chassis. It also greatly simplified manufacture and reduced costs. The clever simplicity of the Fordson design is clearly illustrated by this cutaway tractor. Depending on your point of view, that's a positive or maybe a negative. And how about this beautiful example? No, it's not a full-size tractor, it's a model. And it's absolutely nut and bolt perfect. And I'm told that if you put petrol in it, it will run. Alongside it were the original casting patterns, a work of art in themselves. The Model F used the same trembler coil ignition system as the Model T car. Many of them were later upgraded to a magneto, like this tractor. The worm drive back axle was also a target for aftermarket manufacturers. This is a Hamilton spur gear transmission, and they claimed it would give you a 50% increase in power.
Unusual.
Production of Fordsons reached over 100,000 tractors in 1923. Almost 750,000 were built between 1917 and 1928. That was thought to represent over half the world tractor market. The biggest single customer was the Russian government, rebuilding agriculture after the revolution. They took over 25,000 Fordsons. This Irish-built long-wing Model F looks to be in pretty much original condition, apart from having had a coat of red paint at some time. It's still on the trembler coil ignition, but the wires to the timer on the front of the engine look like they're going to need changing at some time very soon. In 1929, it was decided to close production in the United States and move everything to Ireland. Ford took this opportunity to upgrade the Fordson Model F and produce a new model called the Fordson Model N. The engine was bought out to bring the power from 19 horsepower to 25. The original Model Ns were painted grey, but later the colour changed yet again to the light blue with red wheels. After only 4 years of production, the Model N was moved to the Dagenham factory in Essex, and the colour was changed yet again to the dark blue with orange wheels. One of the most sought after Fordsons today are the so-called transitional Fordsons. They were manufactured in the UK using up parts from the old Irish production. In 1933 we see another colour change, this time to Harvest Gold.
And used on an airfield, but then it was purchased by a farmer who used it on a farm, and it's been laid up for several years and years. But the present owner actually bought a tractor on the farm and seen this, and his son pestered him for quite a few years to go back and buy the scallop, and which he did. So nice to see all of its original condition and how it's done. That's a scallop.
Just play the Queen on the gear lever before she pop into gear. But when
By September 1939 we were back at war yet again, and still relying on the Fordson tractor. The orange Fordsons were far too visible from the air, so the colour was changed to a camouflage green.
Got some details about this one as well.
Annual tractor production rose to around 26,000 units during 1942 and 1943. At this time, Ford had 90% of the UK tractor market. Fordsons were also required for military work. So the army of Fordsons managed to keep the country fed during the difficult days of the Second World War. If you want to see Fordson tractors at work today, you need to be at a local ploughing match. They're one of the most popular tractors for trail ploughing because they're so easy to get on and off. A lot of them have been converted to diesel because the petrol paraffin engines were just perhaps a little temperamental, and they're getting very old now. We'll take a look now at some of these tractors hard at work on the plough. Count how many of them you can find without the original engine in. So you'll have gathered by now that there are numerous different diesel conversions out there. This is quite an unusual one, and I'm not quite sure what the engine is. Perhaps somebody will tell me. And if you've struggled with a Fordson that won't start, you'll understand why the conversions are so popular. I was on farm with this particular Fordson recently, and the conclusion was that the only way they were going to get it to go was to scare it into life by towing it with a diesel. If you'd like to see the conclusion of what happened to this particular reluctant Fordson, you'll have to join us again next week, where we'll have a full episode from this location. There were many other variants of Fordson produced throughout its working life. There was a big market out there for row crop tractors, and Fordson had its own versions. It's unusual to see a Fordson F high clear. This is thought to be the only one in the UK. If you've got a drainage problem, one of these in your vintage collection could be quite useful. The one thing about owning a popular tractor like a Fordson, there are always plenty of people to help you when it starts to cause trouble. This winch tractor soon attracted a crowd when it started running rough. This is the tractor that's being reported. Roadless were just one of the companies that produced a Fordson track conversion. This one just needs a couple of real busy weekends and you'll have it running in no time. And this one is a Traxxon conversion from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There now seems to be quite a number of Traxons in preservation in the UK. And this is a narrow track conversion on a Model F. You'll notice that it's also been converted to coil ignition with a distributor. The more common method of getting away from the trembler coils was the magneto conversion like this one. And here's a very unusual attachment for a Fordson F, the Athens disc plough. Notice how it comes complete with the extended right hand side axle. I'm told that the draft of the discs makes the tractor quite difficult to handle. If you look at it, both back wheels are with the strakes pointing in the same direction to counter the draft of the plough. And here we have a Evelyn and Barford road roller conversion for a Standard Fordson.
From the sale last year, here, Wartime, Peterborough and registered Northampton JNX. 37.
So we've been on a long journey, right from 1917 all through the First World War years and carrying right on until the end of the Second World War. The Standard Fordson was eventually replaced in 1945 by the Fordson Major or E27N. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, don't forget to click the thumbs up button and give us a like. And also, why don't you subscribe? That way you'll be notified when we launch the next video. If you're looking for a project, there's always a Standard Fordson out there in the nettles somewhere. You just got to go and look for them. Only a couple of years ago I found one on top of a heap of scrap in a scrapyard. And we'll finish here with this example of a tractor that's just perfect for restoration. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week.